You wake up one morning staring at the guitar gathering dust in the corner, the one that used to light up your nights with effortless joy. And now it just sits there, silent like a stranger. What if this emptiness isn't a failure, but the first whisper of your true self breaking free? Ignore it, and you'll wander lost in the ruins of who you pretended to be. Let's step into this together gently and see what waits beyond the void. That nagging hollow where your passions used to thrive, it's not laziness or burnout stealing them away. It's the moment your soul outgrows the games your mind played to keep you safe. You've faced something raw inside, and now the old distractions feel like echoes of a life that no longer fits. This isn't just a phase. It's the psyche signaling that the illusions you've clung to are crumbling, leaving space for something real to emerge. Picture this. You're scrolling through your phone late at night, the weight of the day pressing down, and you remember how baking used to pull you out of that fog-kneading dough like therapy, the scent filling your apartment with warmth. But lately, even the thought exhausts you. It's not the hobby that's changed. It's you. Before these activities were your quiet armor shielding you from the loneliness that creeps in when the world goes silent. They made you feel productive, worthy, connected, even if just for a fleeting moment. Now, after glimpsing that deeper unrest, the Carl Jung shadows stirring beneath the surface, they ring hollow. As Jung said, "In each of us there is another whom we do not know." And when that other starts to speak, the props we leaned on start to crumble. This trigger often sneaks up quietly, doesn't it? Maybe it's during a weekend you once filled with hikes or reading marathons, now spent staring at walls, wondering where the spark went. For so many introspective millennials burned out from endless scrolling and societal demands, this moment feels like a betrayal of self, of joy. But what if it's not? What if this loss is your psyche's way of saying, "Stop hiding, it's time to meet me"? It's the first crack in the facade where the ego's distractions no longer suffice. Take a breath here. Is there a hobby you once loved that's now gathering dust? Jot it down. We'll come back to it. Allow yourself to feel the quiet pull of that memory without judgment. As we move forward, let's explore how this split inside you began to form layer by layer. Deep down, you've always sensed this divide, haven't you? That quiet ache when you force a smile through exhaustion, chasing hobbies that once promised escape, but now feel like obligations. It's the split between the face you show the world and the truths you've buried the polished exterior, hiding the messier depths. In Carl Jung's philosophy, this is the clash of persona and shadow, the persona being that carefully crafted mask we wear to navigate society, to be liked, to belong, and the shadow, those raw, unacknowledged parts, the anger, the insecurities, the desires we push away because they feel too dangerous, too vulnerable. Hobbies often prop up that mask. They become our badges of identity, our ways of saying, "This is who I am." The runner proving resilience against life's chaos, the writer seeking validation through perfectly curated words, the cook hosting dinners to mask a fear of solitude. But when you begin shadow work, whether through therapy, a life-shaking event, or those late-night reflections that force you to confront what's hidden, the persona starts to crack. What fed your ego before approval from others, the distraction from pain, the illusion of control no longer sustains your emerging self. The joy fades because it's tied to a false foundation. Let me share a story that might feel eerily familiar, like looking into a mirror of your own past. Meet Elena, a 32-year-old graphic designer from Chicago, always known as the creative one in her circle of friends. She poured hours into digital art, sketching vibrant pieces on her tablet and posting them online, soaking up the likes and comments that made her feel seen in a world that often overlooked her quiet intensity. It wasn't just a hobby. It was her anchor, a way to prove she was enough to drown out the inner voice whispering doubts from childhood neglect. But after a tough breakup that shattered her illusions, forcing her to face her pattern of people-pleasing, her Carl Jung shadow of suppressed rage and unmet needs, she sat down to draw one evening and felt nothing. The colors blurred into meaninglessness. The strokes felt forced. It wasn't boredom. It was a profound liberation from performing for an invisible audience. Her art had been a costume, hiding the vulnerabilities she dreaded showing. Now, without that crutch, she wondered, who am I if not the artist everyone expects? What do I create when no one's watching? This inner tear can feel like grief, a soul hunger gnawing at you from the inside, leaving you restless and adrift. Jung called it the path to individuation, the lifelong process where the false self fragments to make room for wholeness, for a more integrated you. Imagine your persona as a grand theater, set elaborate and convincing hobbies, the glittering props that keep the show alive, drawing applause and keeping the shadows off stage. When the Carl Jung shadow emerges, demanding its place in the light, the stage collapses with a thunderous crash, leaving you standing in the dim aftermath, stripped bare and disoriented. The pain is real and visceral, that fear of being ordinary, of being unseen or worse, of being truly known for all your complexities. Yet this emptiness isn't punishment. It's the psyche's gentle yet insistent invitation to authenticity. The old joys, ego-driven and fleeting like summer fireworks, give way to a deeper void, one that echoes with profound questions. What if you've outgrown the role you've been playing? What remains when the performance ends, when the curtain falls for good? And here's where it twists in unexpected ways. Sometimes we cling harder in desperation, forcing ourselves back into those hobbies, recreating routines that once brought comfort, only to feel more alienated, more hollow. Why does this happen? Because the shadow demands integration, not suppression. It won't be ignored. Think of it as a river dammed for too long. When the barriers finally break, the flow changes everything in its path, reshaping the landscape. For millennials like us, especially those in the US, navigating the relentless pressure of performance culture, hustling for likes, building personal brands, chasing productivity highs, this split hits particularly hard. We've built entire identities around these activities. The gamer, escaping the isolation of remote work. The yogi, chasing inner peace to avoid the chaos of emotional turmoil. The podcaster, sharing stories to feel connected in a disconnected world. All valid coping mechanisms until the shadow whispers, "This isn't the real you, this is survival." The tension builds relentlessly, soul versus survival, ego joy, quick, shiny, and superficial versus the quiet, insistent hunger for deeper meaning. But pause here and breathe into this recognition. If a hobby once made you feel enough, what wound was it really covering? Was it loneliness, fear of failure, or something even older? Reflect on that in your journal tonight. Let the words flow without editing. What emotions arise as you write? Sometimes this split manifests in subtler ways: procrastination that feels like betrayal, or a sudden aversion to what once excited you. It's the psyche's way of protecting you from further disconnection, urging you to stop feeding the false self. As we spiral deeper into this exploration, let's uncover what this loss truly reveals, because it's not the end of your story, but a doorway to the heart of it where true liberation awaits. Here's the piercing truth you've been circling, the one that might make your chest tighten. With recognition that loss of interest isn't random apathy, or a sign you've broken. It's the raw, unflinching exposure of your Carl Jung shadow. Those hidden facets of yourself demanding to be seen, acknowledged, and woven back into your being. Those beloved hobbies. They were often subtle escapes, clever band-aids plastered over deeper wounds, like unspoken grief from past losses, the gnawing fear of failure that echoes from early rejections, or the profound loneliness of unmet dreams in a world that prizes independence over connection. Before shadow work entered your life, they distracted beautifully, filling the gaps where your authentic self ached to emerge, providing a temporary balm that let you function without facing the pain head on. But once you face the shadow through those vulnerable therapy sessions, where tears flow, unbidden quiet meditations that unearth buried resentments, or life crises that strip away pretenses, the mask dissolves completely, and you're left sitting with the wound itself raw and exposed. No more numbing through endless Netflix binges that once drowned out the inner noise. No more losing yourself in crafting projects that built walls against vulnerability. The psyche insists on truth, on sitting in the discomfort until it transforms. Jung described this transformative phase as the nigredo, the blackening in alchemical terms where everything familiar darkens and decomposes to purify the soul. A dark night of the soul, where illusions burn away like fog under a rising sun. It's brutal, yes, yet profoundly sacred, a necessary descent before ascent. Who are you when nothing distracts you? When no role defines you? When the silence amplifies every unspoken thought? For many of us in our late 20s to early 40s, navigating identity loss amid the chaos of career pivots, relationship shifts, and societal burnout. This reveal hits like a sudden storm, uprooting what we thought was stable. We realize, often with a mix of shock and relief, that our passions were intricately tied to ego, needs the photographer capturing perfect moments to combat the impermanence of life, the musician playing fervent melodies to drown out the inner silence that feels too vast, the reader devouring books to escape the weight of their own narrative. Shadow work rips that away, forcing a confrontation that's as liberating as it is terrifying. Consider Alex, a 28-year-old software engineer from Seattle who lived for hiking those rugged trails that made him feel alive, conquering peaks as undeniable proof of his inner strength and resilience. Weekends were sacred escapes into nature, camera in hand, posting summit selfies that garnered envy and admiration from friends. But after losing his job unexpectedly, a blow that echoed deeper abandonment fears from a fractured childhood, he dove into self-reflection, unearthing his Carl Jung shadow of vulnerability he had long suppressed. One crisp morning, he laced up his boots for a familiar trail, but each step echoed with emptiness. The panoramic views no longer masked his isolation. The exertion felt pointless. It wasn't depression sneaking in. It was rebirth announcing itself. As Jung so insightfully put it, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Alex's story mirrors so many of ours. The void exposes what we unconsciously projected onto our hobbies, the validation we craved from external sources, now redirected inward where it belongs. This revelation disrupts everything you've built, shaking the foundations. You might feel utterly torn, questioning your entire path. If this joy was false, built on avoidance, what else in my life is an illusion? The psychological tension peaks here, a crescendo of curiosity and pain, intermingled what emerges from the ashes of these old attachments. But here's the essential shift, the healing insight that reframes it all. It's not loss, it's clarity, a compassionate unveiling. The Carl Jung shadow isn't an enemy lurking to destroy. It's the unloved, disowned parts of you, begging for embrace, for integration into a fuller self. In this nigredo phase where the blackening feels all-consuming, remember that alchemy promises gold from the base, true passion from the purified psyche. For introspective seekers like you, silently wrestling with emotional burnout and the quest for deeper meaning, this is the mirror you've been needing, one that sees you in your struggle, holds space for the complexity, and whispers that you're not alone. The hobbies that faded were coping mechanisms, yes, but their departure clears the path for soul-aligned pursuits. Midway through this journey, a haunting question to linger on. What if the hobbies you mourn were never truly yours, but mere echoes of a self you outgrew long ago? Let that sink in deeply. It might just crack open the peace you've been chasing all along, revealing the curiosity beneath the pain. As we turn this corner with care, remember the void isn't eternal or punishing. It's the threshold to something infinitely truer, a portal waiting for you to step through. Facing that inner void can feel like standing at the edge of a vast cliff, the wind howling around you, every familiar anchor swept away in the gale. Your heart races with uncertainty, the ground beneath shifting like sand. But listen closely. This isn't breakage or defeat. It's the quiet, undeniable signal of rebirth unfolding within you. You're not lost in some irreparable way. You're in the liminal space that's sacred in between, where the old mask dissolves and the emerging soul begins to take shape. In Jung's profound framework, this is where the transcendent function comes alive, that inner alchemy bridging opposites, persona and shadow, ego and self-fragmentation and wholeness. It weaves the torn threads back together, not perfectly, but authentically. Think of it as a fierce fire consuming dry, brittle wood, not to destroy aimlessly, but to release the hidden light trapped within, transforming what was rigid into radiant energy. Your psyche burns away those ego-driven joys, the ones rooted in external validation, to reveal the pure gold beneath the authentic essence waiting to shine. For Elena, from our earlier story, the turning came slowly, almost imperceptibly at first. One rainy evening, instead of forcing herself back to the canvas with gritted teeth, she picked up a pencil and doodled absent-mindedly on scrap paper, no audience in mind, no expectations weighing her down. Colors flowed not for praise or perfection, but for raw release, her shadow's long-suppressed rage finding form in swirling abstract storms, her vulnerability emerging in soft, tentative lines. It wasn't the old hobby reborn in its former glory. It was something new, an authentic expression rising from the depths, unburdened by performance. The innocent child within her, who once used art as a desperate cope for feeling unseen, finally met the awakened adult who no longer needed to hide behind creations. This shift brings a hope that's laced with grounded realism. It won't happen overnight. No magical flip of a switch. You might wander through weeks or even months of feeling unmoored, adrift in the uncertainty, second-guessing every small step. But subtle signs begin to appear, like faint stars piercing a cloudy night, a book on your shelf that suddenly calls to you with urgency, a solitary walk that stirs forgotten wonder in your chest, a conversation that ignites a spark you thought extinguished. The pain reframes itself gradually from overwhelming despair to a glimpse of emerging meaning, a quiet assurance that this too is part of the process. For millennials like us, shedding the heavy skins of performance culture where every hobby had to mean something or build a resume, this turning point feels like exhaling after holding your breath too long. We catch glimpses of freedom hobbies without the suffocating pressure of outcomes, driven instead by an intrinsic soul hunger, a pull toward what nourishes rather than numbs. It's okay if the rebirth feels messy, incomplete. Jung reminds us that individuation is a spiral, not a straight line. Here's a gentle invitation to lean into this tonight sit with the void without rushing to fill it with distractions. What whispers emerge from the silence journal? This prompt: what old joy am I ready to release, and what new seed stirs faintly within me? Let the words surprise you. They might hold the key to your next step. From here, as the pieces begin to realign, the return home begins gentle, inevitable, like a river finding its way back to the sea. Now, as the fragments of your inner world settle like dust after a storm, you start to feel it, a soft, tentative reconnection, like the first light of dawn creeping over the horizon after a long, restless night. Authentic creativity creeps back in, not as a forced performance for others, but as pure, unadulterated expression from the core of you. Music returns not to impress crowds or garner applause, but to soothe the jagged edges of your soul notes flowing like a balm over old scars. Gardening blooms anew as a quiet communion, with growth and cycles hands in soil, grounding you in the present. Journaling transforms into a sacred dialogue with your depths, words spilling out as honest confessions rather than polished narratives. In Jung's vision of individuation, true joy flows not from doing to achieve or prove, but from being through doing, integrating the Carl Jung shadow into a harmonious wholeness where nothing is exiled. What you lose in this process is never the core of you. It's only the cumbersome costume that weighed you down, restricting your true movements. For Alex, our hiker from Seattle, the return unfolded on a misty trail he hadn't visited in months. No more frantic conquests of peaks for Instagram glory. Instead, mindful steps breathing in the wild sense as a mirror to his own inner landscape, each breath a step towards self-acceptance. The hikes felt alive again because they were soul-fed, free from the ego's relentless grip, allowing vulnerability to walk alongside strength. This return is a place of safety, a profound remembering you're whole, you always were, even in the fragments. The emptiness that once tore at you was just the necessary space for this reintegration, a womb for rebirth. As introspective seekers navigating emotional burnout, we rediscover that hobbies, or whatever form they take now, can be portals to healing, not escapes from it. Walking becomes meditation, cooking a ritual of self-care, reading a conversation with forgotten parts of self. Take this gently without pressure. What quiet activity calls to you now, free from any expectation? Explore it one breath at a time, noticing how it feels in your body. Perhaps start small, a sketch, a melody, a stroll, and let it unfold organically. As we near the end of this spiral, carry this warmth with you. The journey inward is ongoing, but you've already begun the return. The void you feared, the one that echoed with loss and uncertainty. It's not a curse to endure. It's your initiation into the self you've always been, a rite of passage, stripping away the unnecessary. Don't rush to reclaim old hobbies out of habit. Let your soul guide you toward the new, the authentic, emerging like spring after winter's hush. As Carl Jung wisely said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. What passion faded after facing your shadow, and what seed waits quietly to grow in its place? Share your story in the comments below. Your vulnerability might light someone's path, fostering our collective healing. If this resonated deeply, subscribe and hit the bell. We're in this rebirth together, one introspective step at a time.